Hong Kong is often known as a city of towering skyscrapers, dazzling lights, and a pace of life that never seems to slow down. But behind that glamorous image lies a completely different world, wilder, older, and far more surprising than many people imagine. This place is not only shaped by concrete, glass, and steel, but also by mountains, the sea, old villages, wetlands, centuries of memory, and landscapes that make you wonder, how can such a small place contain so many opposite worlds at once? This journey reveals a side of Hong Kong that few people truly see, where nature, history, and human life exist right beside one of the most energetic cities on Earth. One World Trade Center. Rising from Lower Manhattan, One World Trade Center is not only a skyscraper, it is a statement built on memory, loss, and the decision to rebuild higher than before. The tower reaches 1,776 feet, a number chosen to echo the year of America's Declaration of Independence. That detail gives the building more than physical height. It gives the skyline a symbolic message, turning architecture into a marker of national identity. Built on the site of the rebuilt World Trade Center complex, the tower stands where the Twin Towers once defined New York's horizon. Its glass surface reflects the city around it, but the meaning behind it is heavier than reflection. It carries the story of a place that was damaged, mourned, and then rebuilt with a new vertical landmark. Unlike older skyscrapers that were born from competition, this one was born from recovery. Sai Kung, in the Eastern New Territories, is the place where Hong Kong begins to feel almost impossible to explain in just one image. This is still the same territory the world knows for towers, banks, highways, crowded train stations, and streets that seem to move without stopping. But in Sai Kung, that familiar Hong Kong suddenly opens into blue water, scattered islands, rugged coastlines, quiet coves, and green hills that feel far away from the pressure of city life. For many visitors, this is one of Hong Kong's greatest surprises. Sai Kung does not look like the picture most people carry in their minds. There are no endless walls of apartment blocks here, no glowing streets squeezed tightly between towers, and no feeling that every space has already been claimed by the city. Instead, the landscape feels wider, rougher, and more exposed. The sea pushes deep into the land. Small islands rise from the water. Rocky shores break the coastline into strange and dramatic shapes. What makes Sai Kung so important is not only its beauty, but the way it changes the meaning of Hong Kong. It proves that this place is not simply a financial city with a few green spaces around the edges. It is, before anything else, a coastal landscape, a territory of mountains and sea, where the urban world occupies only one part of the story. Chrysler Building. With its shining steel crown and sharp Art Deco lines, this tower looks less like an office building and more like a machine-age monument. It rose during a time when New York was racing upward, and every new skyscraper seemed to challenge the one before it. Completed in 1930, it briefly became the tallest building in the world. That title did not last long, but its image did. The tower was built for the Chrysler Corporation, and every detail reflects the confidence of America's automobile age, from the metallic ornamentation to the eagle-like decorations that echo the hood ornaments of classic cars. Its most famous feature is the stainless steel crown, a series of curved arches that catch the light and make the building instantly recognizable from far across Manhattan. Unlike many towers that impress mainly through size, this one impresses through personality. It stands as a reminder that a mega project does not always need to be the biggest forever. Sometimes, a building becomes unforgettable because it captures the spirit of a moment better than anything else around it. By the end of this journey, Hong Kong no longer feels like one single image. It is not only the city of glass towers, crowded streets, neon lights, and ferries crossing Victoria Harbour. Those images are real, and they are part of what makes Hong Kong famous. But they are only the first layer, the version most people notice before anything else. The deeper story is found along the edges. It appears on ridges, like Dragon's Back, where the city suddenly looks smaller beneath the hills. It appears in Shek O, where the sound of waves softens the pressure of the urban world. It appears in Sai Kung and Hai Island, where volcanic stone, blue water, sea cliffs, and rugged coastlines reveal a Hong Kong shaped by forces far older than any skyline. It appears in Tai O, where wooden houses stand above the tide, and the sea still feels like part of everyday life. It appears on Lantau, where mountains, temples, mist, and open sky create a slower rhythm. It appears in Mai Po, where birds cross borders without noticing them, and wetlands continue to breathe quietly beside the city. Aberdeen Harbour carries the scent of an older Hong Kong. Before the city became known for finance, towers, and global trade, this harbour was shaped by fishing boats, floating homes, seafood markets, and people whose lives moved with the rhythm of the water. Even today, Aberdeen feels like a place where the modern city and the old maritime world still stand face to face. That contrast can be felt everywhere. On one side, high-rise buildings press close to the shoreline. On the other, boats rest in the harbor, carrying the memory of a time when Hong Kong's economy was tied much more closely to fishing, salt air, and daily labor at sea. The water here is not just a background behind the city, it is part of the city's beginning. Aberdeen was once strongly linked with boat-dwelling communities, people who lived and worked on the water for generations. Their world was practical, crowded, and always in motion. A boat could be a home, a workplace, a means of transport, and a family space, all at the same time. Cheung Chau feels like Hong Kong finally breathing out. After the pressure of the city, the harbor, the high-rises, and the crowded districts, this small island changes the rhythm almost completely. There are no highways cutting through its center, no skyline pressing down from every direction. Life moves through narrow lanes, small shops, seafood stalls, bicycles, fishing boats, and the steady sound of waves meeting the shore. Cheung Chau is not far from the urban heart of Hong Kong, but it seems to live at a different tempo. The island has been connected to the sea for a long time. Its harbor, fishing traditions, and compact village streets reveal a version of Hong Kong that was built around water before modern development became the main story. Here, the coast is not just scenery for visitors to look at. It is part of daily movement, part of local memory, and part of the island's identity. What makes Cheung Chau especially interesting is how much life can fit into such a small place. The village feels dense, but not in the same way as the city. Instead of towers, its density comes from human closeness. Homes near shops, boats near the pier, restaurants beside the water, temples near the lanes, and people moving through spaces that feel old, practical, and deeply lived in. Victoria Peak, Hong Kong. Rising above the heart of the city, Victoria Peak is where Hong Kong reveals its most unforgettable face. The first thing that captures you is the view. From this height, Victoria Harbour stretches like a silver ribbon between Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, while skyscrapers rise tightly together, reflecting the city's speed, ambition, and energy. But the peak is more than a viewpoint. The journey up by the historic peak tram is an experience of its own. As the tram climbs the steep hillside, buildings seem to tilt, streets fall away, and the city slowly transforms beneath your feet. Then comes the most magical moment, sunset. The sky softens, the harbor darkens, and one by one, the lights of Hong Kong begin to glow until the entire skyline looks like a city of stars. And beyond the famous observation decks, Victoria Peak has a quieter side. Along paths like Lugard Road, the noise fades, trees surround you, and the city appears through openings in the greenery, like a secret being revealed. Victoria Peak is not simply a place to take a picture. It is where Hong Kong's nature, history, skyline, and soul come together in one breathtaking panorama. In Tai O, the first thing you notice is not the skyline. It is the salt in the air, the low sound of small boat engines moving through narrow channels, and the sight of wooden houses standing above the tide. On the western side of Lantau Island, this old fishing village feels less like a tourist stop and more like a memory that Hong Kong has somehow managed to protect. For generations, life here was shaped by water. The channels were not just beautiful scenery, they were roads, workplaces, markets, and lifelines. Boats moved through places where cars could never go. Families built their homes above the tide because the sea was not something separate from everyday life. It was part of the home itself. That is what makes Tai O feel so different from the Hong Kong most people imagine. In the city center, space is often measured by height, rent, speed, and how much can be squeezed into one small area. But in Tai O, space is measured by water, wooden walkways, fishing boats, and the quiet rhythm of the tide. The village does not try to defeat nature or rise above it. It learns how to adjust to it. Empire State Building. Rising above the skyline of Midtown Manhattan, the Empire State Building is not simply a skyscraper. It has become a symbol of a nation striving to rise during one of the darkest periods in its economic history. Completed in 1931, the building reached a height of 1,250 feet, or about 381 meters, above the New York skyline and held the title of the tallest building in the world for nearly 40 years. Yet what makes it special is not only its height. This structure was built during the economic crisis of the 1930s, a time when confidence was fading and the future felt uncertain. In just 410 days, steel, stone, glass, and human effort were combined to raise the building at a speed that is almost difficult to imagine. At first, the building struggled to attract tenants and was seen as being ahead of its time in a negative sense, too early for the actual demand of the era. But the flow of history changed how the public viewed it. In 1933, the image of King Kong climbing the building on the big screen turned it into a global icon. Since then, the building has appeared in hundreds of films. It is no longer just an architectural structure, but one of the greatest symbols of America. Dragon's Back, on the southeastern side of Hong Kong Island, is one of the clearest places to see the hidden shape of this city. The name sounds almost mythical at first, but once you reach the ridge, it starts to feel perfectly fitting. The trail rises and dips along the back of the hill, almost like the spine of a sleeping creature, stretching quietly between the city and the sea. What makes Dragon's Back so surprising is not just the view itself, but how close it remains to the urban world. Not far from the crowds, the traffic, the apartment towers, and the busy shopping streets, the land suddenly begins to open. The air feels lighter, the buildings slowly fall away, and from the ridge, Hong Kong no longer looks like a place made only from concrete, glass, and steel. It becomes a landscape built in layers. On one side, green slopes roll down toward the water. On another, beaches, quiet bays, and the open South China Sea spread far into the distance. Farther away, the urban skyline is still there, but from this height, it feels smaller, almost temporary, as if the mountains have always been the stronger and older presence. High Island Reservoir, deep inside the Hong Kong UNESCO Global Geopark, reveals a side of Hong Kong that feels far older than the city most people know today. Here, the story moves away from towers, roads, and crowded streets. It becomes a story of stone, water, pressure, and time. Along this rugged edge of Sai Kung, the coastline is lined with strange hexagonal rock columns, formations born from ancient volcanic activity long before Hong Kong ever rose into a global city. What makes this place so striking is the setting around it. On one side lies a reservoir built to store fresh water for a dense and modern population. On the other side, there is the open sea, steep cliffs, restless waves, and volcanic rock shaped by forces far beyond anything human beings could control. The contrast feels almost unreal. A man-made water system stands beside a coastline that looks as if it belongs to another world. The rock columns are the most unforgettable signature of this landscape. They rise in tight patterns, stacked, cracked, and arranged like a form of natural architecture. From a distance, they can seem almost too precise to be real, as if they were designed by intention. But their shape came from cooling volcanic material, slowly breaking into geometric forms as the Earth changed over time. In a city celebrated for engineering and construction, these stones offer a quiet reminder that nature built its own structures here long before people ever did. On Lantau Island, Hong Kong slows down in a way that feels almost unexpected. The noise becomes softer. The roads begin to stretch through greener land. The air feels wider, calmer, and more open. And high in the mountains, the Tian Tan Buddha sits above Nung Ping, facing the island with a stillness that feels far away from the speed and pressure of the city. This is one of the strongest contrasts Hong Kong has to offer. Only a short distance from airports, rail lines, and dense urban districts, Lantau holds a completely different atmosphere. It feels larger, quieter, and more spacious than the Hong Kong most visitors first meet. Here, The story is not only about movement, height, and pressure. It is also about stopping for a moment, breathing more slowly, and seeing another side of the city. The Tiantan Buddha, often known as the Big Buddha, rises about 34 meters high, making it one of the most recognizable spiritual landmarks in Hong Kong. But its power does not come only from its size. It comes from where it stands. The statue is not placed in the middle of a crowded city square. It sits among mountains, mist, trees, and open sky. At Mai Po, the city becomes quiet in a way that feels almost impossible beside such a crowded urban world. There are no towers pressing into the sky here, no neon streets glowing through the night, no constant rush of people moving through train stations. Instead, the landscape opens into mudflats, mangroves, reed beds, fish ponds, and shallow water that changes with the tide. This is Mai Po Nature Reserve, near Inner Deep Bay, one of the most important wetland areas in Hong Kong. What makes this place remarkable is not that it tries to look dramatic. It is that it feels alive in a slower and quieter way. Birds arrive here during long migrations, stopping to feed and rest before continuing across vast distances. For them, Mai Po is not just scenery, it is survival. The mud may look simple from far away, but it holds an entire hidden system. When the tide pulls back, the exposed flats become a feeding ground. Small creatures move through the wet earth, birds gather in the shallows, and the whole landscape seems to breathe with the movement of the water. Shan Heritage Trail, in the New Territories, brings Hong Kong into a much older chapter of its story. Here, the story does not begin with glass towers, crowded markets, or the busy harbor. It begins with ancestral halls, old study rooms, village gates, walled settlements, and families whose roots reach back long before Hong Kong became known as a global financial city. This part of Hong Kong feels quieter, but it carries a deep and lasting weight. Along Shan Heritage Trail, the past does not appear as one huge monument meant to impress from a distance. It reveals itself through smaller details: a courtyard, a brick wall, a traditional roofline, a shrine, a narrow path running between old village buildings. Each piece points back to a time when this region was shaped more by clans, farming communities, and local customs than by international business. That is what makes the New Territories so important to understanding Hong Kong. For many people, Hong Kong begins with Central, Kowloon, or Victoria Harbour. But this land had a life long before the skyline appeared. Villages grew here. Families built halls to honor their ancestors. Education, lineage, land, and tradition shaped daily life in ways that still echo through these old structures.